What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a new episode of the Airflow Podcast. I am your host, Ricky Thomas, and I am grateful that everyone is here listening today. Grateful to be back as we look to start to round out and finish out the Manifestation Rewritten series. This week, we are focused on episode 8, which is entitled Wait, Watch as It Transforms. So last week, we talked about we talked about the seed and sowing the seed and really focusing on that. Now it's waiting and watching as it transforms, as that seed grows, as we sow seeds of positivity, as we fertilize, as we grow, as we continue to do everything that we know to plant the seed. Once we do that, we also have to sit back and rest in it and watch as it transforms. So that's going to be the focus of really what we're doing in this episode. And just to kind of continue to get into that before we break out our my famous acronym, is to understand that manifestation doesn't always mean movement. And I think, again, I say this a lot, I'm not trying to limit movement, but it doesn't always mean movement. Sometimes the greatest growth happens in stillness. And that is a skill set. That is something that is not always easy. But being still sometimes is important because the movement that we do can cause more damage than it does good. We're just staying busy, but we're not progressing. So this episode is going to teach really that waiting is not a delay in destiny. It's development in disguise, which I kind of thought of, and I'm like, that's pretty good. So I'll say that again. Waiting is not a delay in destiny. It's development in disguise. So we've sown the seed, we activated our faith, and we've taken aligned action. So now it's really time to just focus on waiting, but not a passive wait, but powerfully waiting. So as we get into our first letter, W, W breaks down as witness the present without panic. Witness the present without panic. Don't let your impatience rob you of your presence. Don't let your impatience rob you of your presence. And that's so important because we always talk about, you want to stay in the moment and in the mindset that is driving us towards manifestation. And it's so easy for things to creep in terms of that deal with impatience, because if we really think about it, we always look at things within that's relative to time. Why do I want to get a promotion? Because there's this, that, I'm tired of the job I'm doing. Or I feel like I've been, unfairly kept from moving up. I deserve this. And so it's a time connotation to it as well, not just the effort I've been giving and all the stuff, but when you really think about it, it's a time you put in, so it's really understanding that being impatient totally throws us out of alignment with manifestation. So again, don't let impatience rob you of your presence. Practice mindfulness and presence, and really focusing on what's already shifting. See, sometimes we're so focused, again, we're supposed to be thinking of the end and always thinking from the end as we go through our daily process. But we also have to practice mindfulness and presence and think what is already shifting in our lives, because there are things that are happening. That's the journey. There's things that are helping us to get to that desired results. But we're missing it and becoming impatient because we want it to happen like tomorrow, or it should have happened yesterday, but it still hasn't happened yet. So again, processes are processes because they do take some time. It's not a process if it's instantaneous. It's just a go do. It's done. And for us to really shift our mindset, to really shift our focus and have the power, truly walk out the power that we have to manifest, we've got to have patience. And the other point in that is we have to understand that we've got to embrace the process, and we've got to embrace it even when it's quiet. It is so easy to think that true progress and true process is happening when there's chaos, when there's noise, when there are so many things going on. It's like, oh, something's got to be happening. And sometimes for us, it's I got to get up and do this and do that. I can't sit still. I can't rest. I feel like I'm not productive, or I'm not moving the needle forward if I'm not doing anything physically, or I'm not doing this or doing that. We have to understand that part of the process is just, you know, embracing it and knowing that there may not be anything that you need to do other than just continue to keep your expectations high. Going back to the last episode, we talked about the seed, and just making sure that you do your part in watering it, putting it in good soil, giving it sunlight. But outside of that, it's going to be quiet. The dirt is still on top of the seed. The seed is buried in there. It's getting all that it needs. It's getting its nutrients, and you have to trust that. You have, because you help to frame it all, put it all together. But it's quiet. There's nothing going on. It's boring. It is. But you have this expectation of what's going to come from that plant or that seed when it sprouts. So embrace the process. Don't worry. Don't let quietness in the process confuse you that nothing's going on. The other part is, look for small confirmations, those small wins, not just the big breakthroughs. And again, a lot of times, and even in corporate America, and this is one of the things that I talk to my team about a lot, and my peers, is that we celebrate the big wins, and we're so focused on the big target that we miss celebrating the small milestones that helped us to get there. And sometimes that, by us not celebrating those things, those milestone victories, it it sort of lessens the journey, and you don't see the growth, and you don't understand how things are until you get to the end, and you're so exhausted you don't take a step back. And it's not, people say smell the roses, it's not a smell the roses and get distracted where you're not still marching towards the goal, but it's saying, hey, we got to this place. I've achieved this. I see this one thing happening. That means the process is working. Great. We're still got a ways to go, and that may be true, but we're one step closer. You get to another milestone. Hey, we got to this place. Excited. Look, it's happening. Those small wins. It's the same thing when you think about, just when we go back to, again, planting the seed. You get excited when you start to see that little sprout come up, even though it's not done. The seed the seed still hasn't fully, been pushed away. The plant isn't standalone yet, but you start to see little things happening. The dirt is starting to move. You see the little sprout come up. All right, we got something going. The small things are important because that helps us to keep from having that panic. Here's a little piece of insight I want to share when we think about panic. Panic really makes us miss the peace that's already present. So again, panic makes us miss the peace that's already present. So look again, understand that progress is very quiet. Progress does not have to be loud. It doesn't have to be, alarming. It doesn't have to be something that's a big production. But those small wins, go back to thinking about my journey of wanting to slim down and lose some weight and build muscle and all that stuff. I will drive myself nuts if I look at the scale daily. And sometimes I look at the scale and see the numbers drop down as much as you want. And so you're like, oh, I didn't hit my weight goal, or I'm having a slow time hitting a weight target. But you missed the small win that, hey, those pants are fitting a little looser. Hey, I lost a notch and I don't have to, I can loosen up my belt some more. I'm sorry, I need to tighten my belt some more. I don't have to, I don't have to wear it on, this notch. I can actually, I got to bring it in a notch. Like, man, this is different for me. Sometimes it's not even a visible change. Sometimes it's just, you're losing inches of body weight, but you're not losing it on the scale. And eventually that scale will change. You will hit that target goal that you have. But in the process, look at yourself. See those small confirmations, those small wins. So that's a big focus there. But again, witness the present without panic. The A in WAIT is anchor your faith, not your fears. It's very important to understand that we can't be rooted in faith and spiraling in fear at the same time. Like that is a total contradiction. Faith and fear are total opposites. You can't say you're in faith or you're 100% in faith and there's fear. If there's fear there, then that means when you think about manifestations, if you have fear, that means that there's something that is not aligning correctly. And when you have misalignment, it is going to be difficult, albeit even impossible, to manifest. So we got to make sure that we are keeping ourselves rooted in fear. And it's real simple. What is the anchor that you're going to choose, that we're going to choose? Is it going to be God's promise or your past? Is it going to be what God told you, or is it going to be what the doctor just told you? Is it going to be what you believe by faith, or is it going to be your current circumstances? You've got to choose which way you're going to be anchored, and you have to stay anchored in that. And based off of that anchor is what's going to drive, where you're going to be, the things that you're going to, the expectations, the things that you're going to manifest. Being anchored in your fears is going to manifest the things that you fear. Being anchored in your faith is going to manifest the things that you truly desire. The other point in that is to really, you've got to have that anchor. And that's why I said, is it going to be God's promise or your past? But in that, you have to use scriptures, affirmations, declarations, anything else that would help drive that to continue to recenter your belief. As I mentioned before, it's a process. You have to consistently do things. Reading scriptures, reading affirmations, declarations will continue to keep you grounded and get you back into the center, recenters your belief. If you stay more focused on your circumstances, your present circumstances, if you stay more present or more rooted in those things that drive you to be frustrated, to be sad, to be stressed, and that's all you talk about, that's all you seem to focus on, that is what you're going to manifest. So one thing to do, and we talked about really faith, is replace worry with worship. Replace worry with worship. Why? Worry that never changes anything. It's not going to give you back any time. It's not going to give you anything. It's not going to build you. Worry does nothing but destroy you. It destroys us. So when somebody says, "Why are you worrying?" and you may respond, "Well, you don't know what I'm going through. You don't know all the struggles that I have." Okay, but you're still here. Worship God through it all, because when you build that kind of muscle, that kind of habit, nothing will keep us down. In Isaiah 26:3, it says that you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. That trust is in God. And we will be in peace if our minds are focused on Him, if He is our anchor. So if our faith in God is our anchor and God is our anchor, that's our compass point. There's nothing that is going to stop us from being able to manifest the things that we desire. So, a quick affirmation to write down, and I would encourage everybody to write this down, is say, I'm anchored in faith, not outcomes. See, you're not moved by outcomes, and a lot of, and I say outcomes, worldly things that happen. I'm not moved easily by, what the feds come back and say about, the Fed comes back and says about the economy, or, what this person says about, oh, we can't do this, or, whatever those things that pop up on the news. That's why a lot of times I don't even watch the news because of those things, and people become rooted in that. They become anchored in what they hear in the news, and it drives fear. I'm anchored in faith, not outcomes. Yes, I know what's going on in the world. I'm not blind. I don't turn a blind eye to it, but I also know what my source is, who my source is. I know whose I am, and because of that, I can always come back around. I'm not saying that every day is perfect. I'm not saying that every day I go to work and I sit at my computer and I feel, you know, that I don't have any challenges that I'm dealing with, or when relationships with family or friends, I don't have challenges. I'm not saying that. I experience life, but I try to quickly get back and recalibrate and recenter myself, and not allow that anchor to drag, or to just detach from that anchor of faith that I've always had. Sometimes we have moments of weakness, but having that faith and having that anchored faith is so important in God. The next letter of W.A.I.T is I, and I is internalize the vision again. And this kind of piggybacks off of what I just said, to being anchored, but sometimes you're losing it. That vision, the why, the what and the why start to fade because you get further away from it because of what's going on, or circumstances, or difficulties, or being impatient. And so that vision that originally drove you to want to do so many things, or the why, the what and the why of what you desire, of what you want to see manifest, it starts to fade at times. And so have the mindset of, if it faded, it's time to refresh it. And sometimes that's pulling back out. If you decided to not look at those affirmations, if you decided to not look at the vision statement, if you decided to not, consistently do whatever it is to drive towards manifesting the things that you desire, refresh it, go back to it again. You can always pick back up. The longer you wait, the more the vision becomes faded, and it's not internalized to where it's just in you. And so every time you get, it's like a sponge. Every time you get a squeeze put on you, that's what's going to exude out of you. And if you stay in that point of being, feeling squeezed, or feeling like, something is taking the faith or the energy or the life out of you, that's because you're not consistently staying in a place where you can absorb that. You're not constantly feeding yourself that to stay in a place that, even if you go through a little bit of a pressing, you still got enough in you to keep you moving forward. So stay refreshed, and continue to come back to the vision, continue to come back to what drove you to get to the place that you wanted to get to, and those desires. Go back to what you saw when you first believed, that vision, and let that live in you again. Everything starts from a vision. It's a thought, it's a vision, and it starts to explore. Go back and revisit your vision board. prayer journals or whatever goals you have, and bring fresh energy into it. Don't come in saying, oh, now I'm gonna have to start over again because I messed up, or I got impatient. Give yourself grace. Don't focus on that. And understand that this is about emotional reactivation. Feel it again as if it's real now. That is that whole process of thinking, feeling from the end, feeling that now. You're reactivating things. So you have to look at it like, I have it now. If you, again, if you desire that marriage and that husband or wife, you have to go back to that thought process that you're married. You wake up next to your spouse each day. You go to dinner. You sit with your spouse. You may make, set a plate at the table for that spouse. You want kids in a family. You start thinking and focusing and smiling when you see families, on the road. You see, driving down the street. You see families walking. You see, families at events. And you smile and see yourself in that. That's manifestation. That's getting recentered and reactivated in the process. Feel it again. So here's something to practice over the course of this week. Speak your vision aloud for 7 days like it's already there. Are you excited? Because if you're not excited, then again, that just means that you're not fully aligned. You don't believe the vision. It's like when people say, hey, if I came and handed you $1 million right now, what would you do? Folks would flip out. They would go crazy, blah, blah, blah. So you sit here today, and if I say, okay, for 7 days, act like you have that $1 million, even though you don't have it in your hands. But 7 days, just act like it's there. What would you do? Are you willing to speak that aloud for 7 days like it's already there? Because it's habit forming. They say it takes you to do something, hear something 7 times before you understand it. They say the same thing about doing something 7 times or multiple times. It becomes a habit after that. Speak it 7 days. Whatever your vision is, speak it like it's already here. So that's speaking it with a feeling, with a belief that it's done. That is faith. And that's putting your faith in action. The last letter in WAIT is T. And T is trust the invisible shifts. Again, we get so caught up in the end results that we don't understand that most of the work is happening where you can't see it. It's those internal things. It's that mindset shift. Again, you may not see that you're not seeing those end results, but it's happening. And the biggest thing is that faith in God. If you're staying anchored in their faith in God, we have to understand that we've got to trust the divine timing and believe and know that there's unseen orchestration that's happening. Things are happening behind the scenes every day when we start to shift our minds and we start to really focus on the desires that we want. When we really talk about manifestation, there's this unseen orchestration that's happening. Trust it and know that God's timing is perfect. It's not our timing all the time, but it's perfect. And when it happens, it's because we'll be prepared and ready to receive it. Another point is to understand that roots grow before fruit shows. And I mentioned that before in the seed episode. Long before that fruit is developed and it manifests, there's roots that grow. And you hear, the deeper the root, they say the blacker, you hear the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Sometimes they say, they say something about skin tone, the darker the skin, the deeper the root. It's an old saying. You see about trees that have good deep roots. They usually last longer. Why? Because they have more reach. They're more grounded, hard to tear down from any storms or any crazy winds or, people try to do stuff to trees that are, but if they're rooted heavily, it takes almost an act of God in some sense. In some my mindsets, it does take an act of God for it to be taken down, or for somebody to physically come cut it down. The wider the roots, the bigger the fruit, the better the fruit is. But it's just the thought process that roots grow before the fruit shows. So we talk about trusting the shift, going back to what we talked about in the seed episode. Don't uproot your seed with doubt. Doubt is the clear way that uproots your seed. And it's not physical. People will think, oh, you physically. No, this isn't a physical thing. This is mentally. This is what we say. These are the things that if you uproot your seed, it's going to happen because of doubt. Doubt kills the seed of faith. And if that's what you're constantly feeding it, that seed will never sprout roots. The other piece is waiting is evidence of maturity and belief. And that one really struck me when I think about it, because to think about, we talked about being patient before, and really you're showing a sign of spiritual and faith maturity when you can not get all crazy and be impatient and do things that is not, it's not right, or cut corners, but then you expect God to bless it. And see, that's when we start getting into trying to accelerate God. You can't accelerate God. There is no artificial intelligence, any AI efficiency you can gain with God. God is going to be on God's timing. God knows what we need, when we need it, how we need it. And we've got to have this mindset shift that God isn't slow, he's strategic. You think about parents and children. Most parents aren't just quick to go get anything for their children, because they look at if it's not, is it age appropriate? Is that toy age appropriate for them? Is that movie appropriate, or that music, or that game, or all these things? Is that really age appropriate for them? And as children, when you get told, well, you've got to wait, or you're not ready, you're not mature enough, a lot of times, we don't accept that very well. But it's the mindset again that we think that, oh, God is being slow. Why is God so slow? No, he's making sure that we're prepared through how we go through our habits, how we form our desires, and really how we speak. See, he's waiting for us to get aligned, to not have confusion and not have doubt. Because when the things that we desire manifest, we want it to manifest and to stick. That's why having those strong roots are important. Because once the fruit is showing, you don't want it to just be a one-time harvest. You want to be able to consistently have harvest. You want to be when you have a giving heart, you have a giving posture, God will continue to pour into us and give us the ability to give, because we're showing him that we're rooted in that. And so he doesn't have to worry about, if I give them this, then things will just wither up and they'll stop giving and they'll fall off and take the anchor off and sail ship. Who's consistent? Whose heart really shows that they desire to have the things that they want? Are they speaking it? Are they doing the affirmations? Are they doing all that work that it takes? It's not about going out there and hustling and this, that, or the other. Hustling is not a part of manifestation. If you have to hustle, if you have to grind, if you have to as people say, get it out the mud to get to where you need to get to manifest the things you desire, then that's not manifest. That's not manifestation. That's more of you doing what you feel you need to do, and it's drawing more praise onto you when you get the things that you desire from the hustle, from the, doing all the stuff. And I'm not saying hustle in a negative connotation, but who gets the glory if we have to hustle to pay all of our bills? God doesn't get it because we're working multiple jobs. And again, this is not me saying that you shouldn't. I mean, people, you've got to do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your family. And you have to locate where you are in faith. But what I'm saying is we've got to make sure that we understand that there are levels to this. There are levels of faith, and and that will help us to understand manifestation. And we wonder why there's a delay sometimes in receiving what it is that we desire, manifesting what we desire, because there is no alignment. We are truly just walking and having these false expectations, or we're having this misunderstanding of what manifestation really is. As I said, it's daily alignment. It's always keeping yourself moving forward, making sure that your actions and your thoughts and just all of those things align. What you say, all of those things, they have to align. So here's some insight that I'm going to put out there, and I just want to make sure that we understand that together. The wait, and sometimes and the wait, the W.A.I.T, that waiting for something. The wait isn't a wall. People think that it is a stop, kind of a stopping point in the process. The wait isn't a wall; it's a womb. It takes 9 months to deliver a baby. To go through the whole process of a pregnancy and birth a child, it takes 9 months. Sometimes our womb is 9 days. Our birthing process is 9 days. Sometimes it can be 9 minutes. Just depends. But if we treat it as a wall, like it didn't happen instantaneously, it's not meant to be, you start speaking those things, then it becomes a wall. But if you understand, like I'm creating a new me, I'm birthing something special here. It's a womb. And I'm going through this process. So growth is growth is often invisible before it's undeniable. Growth is often invisible before it's undeniable, which means you don't know what's going on. And again, I go back to the weight process of losing weight, or and again, some people may not see it. They don't know, or you haven't come out, you haven't shown any pictures. You show the before shot, people saw how you were, and you went dark. I say dark meaning you went kind of silent. You weren't posting on social media. You were just hitting the gym and grinding each day. And, the people who were close to you understood the journey and they were supporting you, but you just put your head down and just said, I'm going to do this. I have an idea of what I want to look like. And I'm, I'm working from that mindset of the end goal now. I'm living that. But it's invisible. People don't see it. You don't even see it yourself. Like I said, you may see numbers on the scale, kind of go up and down, or whatever. But see, it's undeniable when you put your pants on, you put a shirt on, and you're like, man, I am losing. Then people see you. You're no longer invisible. The growth is evident. The other thing is we talked about birth. A child forms in the womb before birth. So is your manifestation. The baby is in the womb, and you feel them kick in, and you sit there and wonder, what is it going to look like? And now, they got all these new new tools and new technology to try to get you an image of what the baby's face looks like, and you go through all of that, but you trust the process. How many of us try to rush a baby out of a mother's womb? Again, perfectly healthy. Not We're not talking emergency C sections, all that, but you don't rush a baby out of the womb. You want the baby to get everything that they're supposed to get, and get that full 9 months in, or get the time that it needs so it can come out healthy. It's the same thing when we're manifesting things. We want to get the full manifestation. I don't want small things. You're going to experience small things along the way, but you don't want to shortcut the birth of whatever it is that you desire. You don't want to shorten that, or you don't want to skimp it by focusing on hurrying it up, speeding up the process. You want it to stay in the womb, develop fully, so when it comes out, it's healthy. It's a healthy, happy baby. Same thing you want to do with what you're trying to manifest. So I want you guys to reflect on a few things. What are you waiting on right now? And then for the things that you're waiting on, are you waiting in fear? Are you waiting in faith? And then I want you to ask yourself, what would it take, or what would it look like to trust the invisible today? And these questions are very valid. And I'm going through, some things right now. I'll be transparent. I've got two children who are in college, and they've got some scholarship money. They've got a little bit of this, but my daughter and both of them have been focused on really manifesting scholarship money, not having to have student loans. Both got great GPAs, all the stuff that you would want. But there's still an obstacle. And so at the beginning of the summer, I gave them books of Neville Goddard to read about manifesting. And, they're both believing that their school is paid for. Now, are they doing work? Yeah, they work jobs over the summer. They're out there looking for scholarships. They're trying to develop, whatever they can. But it's really thinking about, and it had me thinking about, what are we really waiting on? Well, we're waiting on, they're waiting on this. I'm waiting on it too with them, of the money to come in to pay for their school, to pay the rest of their school off. The question of, am I waiting in fear or in faith? It depends. I have faith that God is going to, has already done it. I have faith that we have the ability to manifest, and we will manifest the money. But when I get into fear is when you look at the schedule, you look at the time. School's got to start in a few weeks. And so that's where, it's like, okay, I'm waiting. I'm still doing my part. My children are still doing their part, but I'm waiting. And so it's a daily thing, as I told you guys, this is all about me, just as much about me doing these things and working through these things as it is anybody else. Anything that I speak here, these are things that I have to work through. And so I ask myself, what would it look like to trust the invisible today? To know that whatever the time frame is left, that is still plenty of time for God to do what he needs to do. And I say God to do what he needs to do. It's already done, but that's enough time to manifest what it is that my children need for their school. So I have to sit back and I have to go through this process, and it's a daily thing. So what are you waiting on right now? Are you waiting in fear or faith? And what would it look like to trust the invisible today, right now? So I want everybody to say this declaration with me. I choose to wait with faith, not frustration. Frustration. Say that over again. I choose to wait with faith, not frustration. I choose presence over panic. I trust what I can't yet see because I know who's working behind the scenes. I'm going to say that declaration one more time. I choose to wait with faith, not frustration. I choose presence over panic. I trust what I can't yet see because I know who's working behind the scenes. All right. So as we prepare to close this out, I want to challenge everybody to create a weight post and share what you're believing God for. And if, again, I know that some people think that if I put it out there, and I'm going to have people praying for my downfall, the PREY, they're not going to want to see me. They're going to want to see me not get there. Don't be afraid. Create a weight post, because you'll be surprised at what putting it out there does. Everything we do will have opposition. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we say it, if we think it. There's the enemies there. There's people that we don't even think are listening, and they're like, no, I don't want that person to do that. There's always that. Be bold. What is it that you're waiting on? Post that. Use the hashtag. Watch as it transforms. And then tag me. Tag Airflow at Air, Heir _flow on IG. And at Airflow on Facebook. And let's build a community where we're speaking what it is that we desire. And there are going to be just as many people that pray for you to get there, that are interceding, that are praying that anything that is limiting me from being able to reach those heights or to be able to manifest those things, any of that doubt that's in me, praying that those things are removed. And then also invite others to speak life while they wait. And just remember for yourselves, and I say for yourself, for each of us, don't complain during cultivation. That complaining, that is another way to kill the seed. Now there's times to vent. But when you're focused on complaining and there's no change, it's just a consistent complain, you're not going to manifest in this time, in that season, until that's fixed. So again, speak life. Understand that it's going to take some time. There's going to be some process that goes with it. But at the end of the day, if you stay focused, you stay in faith, and you stay aligned, you will see the manifestation come about. And it is going to raise your level of expectation, your level of faith, to a place where doubt won't have a place to creep in. So on our next episode, again, it was your rounding out. We've got 2 more left in this series, 10-part series. Episode 9 will be rest. Release everything, surrender trustfully. Because rest is not laziness. It's spiritual leadership. It's spiritual maturity, as we talked about in this episode. So I want everybody to understand that heirs don't just hustle, they trust. While others rush, we watch as it transforms. I love you guys. I pray again that this has been an informative, life-changing episode. I would just ask, if you have others that are in need of this kind of transformation, this kind of motivation, this kind of inspiration, please share the podcast. There's information that will be a part of in the podcast description. We are at all the major platforms for podcasting: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, even Facebook podcast. We are all over, and we're continuing to grow and develop. As I mentioned before, there's a clothing line that is almost wrapped up and working through some sort of final renderings, final pieces of the website that I want to complete. It's almost done. And this is a complete rebrand of really joining where we started off as a foundation of billionaire flow. Now it's grown into airflow because we've taken the limitations off. The focus now is being heirs in everything that we do. So again, as always, I love you guys. I pray that your day is blessed, your week is blessed, the rest of this year is blessed, your life is blessed, because that's what we're called to do. That's what we're supposed to do as heirs. Take care until next time. Flow on.